Perhaps more than any other recent piece of legislation, the Citizenship Amendment Bill has drawn fierce debates on both sides. Joining us on NDTV is Harish Salve to weigh in on the Citizenship Amendment Bill, one of India's top legal experts. He joins us via Skype from London. Mr. Salve, thank you so much indeed for talking to NDTV. Now, I've heard you say in previous interviews that you by and large think that this bill is defensible, that this is in fact a pro-minorities bill. And indeed, I don't think it will be anyone's case that if India is providing sanctuary to persecuted minorities, that would be a problem. I think the reason why this bill has raised serious and legitimate concerns is the selection of the countries and the selection of the minorities. Why only Muslim majority countries and non-Muslim minorities from those countries?
Let me start by saying this. In my understanding of the Constitution, the choice of countries, especially if this is based on some intelligible differentia, i.e. the three neighboring countries, where the people of which countries have a lot of ethnic connection with India, is perfectly legitimate classification. You may criticize India as saying, why are we not more equally generous to other countries? Why are we not generous to others who are persecuted in neighboring countries, beyond neighboring countries, in Africa, in other parts of the world, in China, and so on?
Sure.
But that is not, that's a policy argument. That's not a constitutional law argument.
No, when you say it's not a constitutional law argument, I think what you're referring to is the fact that under Article 14, which is about equality under law, it does provide for reasonable classification. And I think what those who are challenging the bill are saying, is this classification reasonable or is it arbitrary? Now, if the argument is that this is meant to address or in a sense redress the wrongs of partition, then why include Afghanistan? And if this is meant to protect persecuted minorities from our neighborhood, then why exclude Myanmar, which has persecuted minorities, which also shares a border with us? Why exclude Sri Lanka, which also has persecuted minorities? Why exclude China, which also includes persecuted minorities?
Under inclusion of this kind in a citizenship law does not violate Article 14. You could have just made it one country specific and said Pakistan. That wouldn't have made it arbitrary. How much do you want to relax your migration law is a pure matter of policy. Somebody may say, expand it to cover Myanmar, expand it to cover Sri Lanka, expand it to even beyond the immediate neighbors and so on. Believe me, Article 14 is not to second-guess Parliament's policy.
Okay.
Have they selected three countries on an intelligible differentia? Yes, they have. These are the three neighboring countries which are Islamic states. Having done so, have they found a basis? Yes, the basis is these are Islamic states where other communities who are named are minorities. If that is so, and the idea is to relax the migration law, relax. You're not creating a ban on migration. You're relaxing the ban on migration to cover these communities. I don't see how it violates Article 14.
Well,
somebody was saying you're excluding Muslims. The law as it stands excludes everybody. You're opening a window for minorities in those three countries.
But
that's a very important distinction.
Yes, but at the same time, here's the argument why this is discriminatory, because you have a pool of illegal migrants in this country. What you're saying is that only migrants of these communities, these religions from these countries get a path to legalization, get a path to citizenship. Muslims don't.
Because the bill says migration for reasons other than state persecution on the ground that the state is an Islamic state is not a valid basis. If that is what it is, and the people who are here are sought to be removed not because of this law, but because of the law as it stands. So if a person who belongs to the majority community of a country wants to migrate, and there may be very good reasons why he wants to migrate.
Yes.
He may want political asylum. He may want to move for economic reasons. Those are still open. If your general law of asylum applies, your general policies of asylum apply, a person from that country will apply and he'll be treated as per that law. But this law says that for these minorities, there is an extra window open. In my view, this doesn't violate Article 14 at all.
But Mr. Salve, this is on the assumption that because you are a Muslim in a Muslim majority country, you can't
Yes.
face persecution. Now, isn't this flawed logic that just because you're a
It's not
majority
flawed
in a
logic.
majority, if I may
Srinivasa.
just finish, it
Right.
wouldn't be
Sure.
anyone's case that in India Hindus are a majority, but that there are sections of the Hindu community, particularly those in the lower rung of the scheduled caste, who would say that they're indeed persecuted.
That is exactly what I'm trying to explain to you as a matter of constitutional law. Persecution can be on account of your political beliefs. Persecution can be on account of your religious beliefs. Persecution can be on account of your social beliefs.
Sure.
Somebody may persecute people who believe in gender neutrality in sexual preferences, which has nothing to do with any religion, caste, or creed. We have recognized one form of persecution. Is it on a valid basis? Yes. Should we recognize other forms of persecution? Maybe, maybe not. That's a matter of policy. Is it not correct that these countries are Islamic republics? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Therefore, the people whom we are allowing migration to are those who are declared minorities in those countries. Correct. Is that a valid classification? Yes, it is. Should others also be allowed? It's a matter of policy.
Again, when you say a matter of policy, this is where I think it becomes important to understand this distinction, because some would say that it's not necessarily just Muslims per se, but within Pakistan, within Afghanistan, within Bangladesh, as we know, there are Muslim sects. There are the Ahmadiyas, there are the Hazaras, and so on and so forth, who are also the victims of persecution.
Exactly.
So why exclude them?
Of course. I can't resist this comment. Those who are staunch, who are great fans of those countries, have never refused to attend their annual day on the ground that those countries prosecute their own people. Doesn't matter. The basis on which we have acted is these people are minorities in those countries. It goes back to the same point. There could be other forms of persecution. Majority could be persecuted, as I said, on so many bases. It could be religious, it could be unrelated to religion. Are we going to recognize all of them? We don't have to. As a matter of constitutional law, we do not have to redress all wrongs in order to redress some wrongs.
Sure.
That's how we understand Article 14.
Okay.
So if we are redressing some wrongs,
Yeah.
the courts will say this is not our job. If Parliament says, look, don't be so narrow in your remit, make it wider, let's be more generous, more magnanimous, more large-hearted.
Right.
And that's for Parliament to discuss and debate. And that's the policy argument.
Okay, but when you go on saying it's policy, though, isn't it at the same time part of the law that when you say that you're trying to defend it by saying we're not being arbitrary, we're not being unreasonable, that these very omissions would then open you up to the charge that you are being arbitrary and you are being unreasonable? You include Afghanistan, but not Myanmar. You include 6 religions, but not Muslims.
Article 14 picks up on 2 points. Have you made a differentiation on an intelligible differentia? Intelligible differentia is minorities in a country which have declared state religion. That's intelligible differentia. Does the provision have nexus with this differentia? Yes, the communities who are minorities are allowed. That's where the Article 14 inquiry must end. The courts do not second guess wisdom of legislation under Article 14.
Okay. Mr. Salve, the concern this is raising is that until now, we have never made religion a qualification for citizenship. But this is for the first time opening up a path for religion-based citizenship, something that we, as a secular republic, are not meant to do.
Well, meant to do is...
Or is not encoded in our constitution.
It is not prohibited by our constitution. We can do everything that other than that which the constitution prohibits. The constitution is a document which lays down boundaries on government. It doesn't lay down what you can do, it lays down what you cannot do. And I do not find any constitutional bar. Speaking for myself, I do not see how accommodating minorities of neighboring states is violating the principles of secularism.
Because it's saying, Mr. Salve, that these particular religions have a path to citizenship, while another religion does not, which almost is making the natural homeland argument that these religions, for India is a natural homeland for these religions, which again, as I said, as a secular country with a secular constitution,
if India was to say that any Hindu can migrate into India, but no other community will migrate into India, I don't know, even that may be constitutionally valid. I don't want to comment on it. But one could raise the argument of saying, are you trying to tilt the secular character of the country? The fact is, these communities are minorities in those countries. If that's a valid basis, how are we denting secularism? Now, you can say, well, you are denting secularism because I don't like you excluding Muslims. Take a converse situation. You could have a situation, take the Tamil situation. Take the Tamil situation. In that context, if one was to say, all right, we will allow people of Indian ethnicity to come back, would that be violative of Article 14? Would that violate secularism? So, one can say, be more generous, be more magnanimous, be the big neighbor, allow any and everybody to come in.
Yes.
I don't subscribe to that argument, but that's an argument which one can make. But to say it damages the secular character of India is something which I find hard to subscribe to.
You don't buy that at all. One thing though.
I don't subscribe to that.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay, but one thing though, because when it comes to actually the defining principle, which is that of religious persecution, the question has come up, and this came up even during the parliamentary debates on this bill, that the bill actually doesn't even mention the main bill, the body of the bill, religious persecution.
It doesn't need to. The bill doesn't need to. The minister has explained it. The bill only says these three countries have declared state religions, and these are minorities. If you ask the minister, what do you mean by this? The minister has explained it. There is no constitutional principle about that the bill must write out everything.
Okay, but
that's why many times when we are arguing validity in Parliament, in the Supreme Court, we refer to parliamentary debates.
Okay, but the question then does arise, Mr. Salve, that how exactly, because the government is still to explain this, that how exactly then would that qualification be proven? So would the onus then therefore be on these communities to then prove that they're victims of persecution?
No. See, when you say I am allowing Sikhs to migrate because of potential persecution, you don't have to say that a Sikh family which is coming in has been persecuted. It is based on a class. Have you created that class on a basis? Yes, these are minorities in those countries. Are these countries generally intolerant of minorities? In India's view, they are generally intolerant of minorities. That's where the argument must end.
So then, therefore, there's no onus on these.
There's
no onus on them to actually prove that they've been persecuted, just by the virtue of the fact that they are from those communities and from those countries.
Please understand, in Article 14, the people who say that the law is violative of Article 14, they will have to prove that there is no persecution of minorities in those countries.
No, will they have to prove that there's no persecution of minorities?
Yes.
Or will they also, no, but what if they're able to show that there's persecution not just of these 6 minorities, there's persecution of others as well?
The persecution of these minorities in a state religion, we are back to the same point.
Okay, we're back to the same point. Let me move on. Now,
but let's be clear about this.
Yes.
Under Article 14, there is a presumption of validity.
Okay. Let me move on, because the question that really this entire bill raises is about whether this is not just questioning the legality of migrants who may have come in, be they Muslims or others, but also about Indian Muslims. And that's because this government has explicitly linked this exercise to a national register of citizens, saying this is a precursor to a citizens register, after which we will then conduct this citizens register. And that is what let me finish. That is what has raised fears that because Muslims have been excluded from the CAB, that millions of Indian Muslims are now fearful about whether this could lead to a loss or a question over their citizenship.
So let us first of all, let's delete these provisions. Let's assume Parliament, these provisions are not passed. Okay, let's assume this bill fails. and the NRC is implemented, the same position will apply. It'll be exactly the same way.
How will it be the
This
same?
is allowing some people to stay back who otherwise would have to go out. This is not making the case of the Indian Muslims worse. It is making the case of the minorities of those countries better. Let's be very clear about this. If this bill gets defeated in Parliament and the NRC is brought with the existing citizenship law, those minorities will have exactly the same problem.
No, Mr. Salve, the difference is that if this bill were to be passed, and it's fairly clear it is going to be passed, that in that case, all major religions except Muslims are exempted from the NRC.
Correct. So the Muslims are
and
not
so the
worse
Muslims
off.
of
The
India
others are
then
better
will
off.
have to face the citizenship test.
So the complaint is like, as Mr. Balkhiwala used to give this narrative, the complaint is that why does my brother not have a rat in his beer? The point is, your neighbor is not going to be evicted, you will be evicted. That's the result of this bill. The result of this bill is not that you will be evicted. So I don't understand this argument. If this bill gets defeated, the people who are worried about the implications of the bill will be evicted in any case.
No, Mr. Salve, the question is, I'm only pushing you on this because this is not just necessarily about those who are here on an illegal basis, but we understand how these citizenship exercises work. Yes, we've seen that in Assam as well, the one state where we have had this exercise. It could have drawn in millions of people who may be legitimate Indian citizens and then put them through the whole trauma of questioning their citizenship and even a potential loss of citizenship.
The answer is exactly the same. If the NRC exercise is flawed,
yes,
even without this bill, it will result in a lot of Indians being thrown out. If the NRC exercise is flawed. And if the NRC exercise is not flawed, this bill is going to just protect some people and not protect others. This bill has nothing to do with the NRC exercise. There have been criticisms of the NRC exercise. I think even the government has acknowledged that there are problems in the NRC exercise.
Yes.
That's a completely different concern. This bill has nothing to do with that. This, in fact, loosens and reduces the enormity of that exercise.
But
so
Mr. Salve, you say this, but it's the government itself which is drawing a link between the two. What the Home Minister has been going around is saying is that, look, we are bringing the NRC, but all the religions covered under this bill, Hindus, Muslims, Hindus,
Correct.
Christians, etc., need not fear. You're safe.
Correct.
You're safe.
Correct. Absolutely correct, because now they have a right to apply for citizenship. So you are reducing the number of people. You are reducing the number of people who will have to leave India. The discriminatory point we've discussed, we've drilled it down to death. You can keep hammering the point till you reach Australia. It won't get any better. I've given you my answer. It is not discriminatory because it is based.
Okay.
Now, to say that this will make the NRC exercise worse is something which I am not understanding.
Okay.
If lesser people will have to leave India, how does it become worse?
Okay. Let me ask you in conclusion, because I don't want to go on, we can just go around in circles. Let me just ask you in conclusion.
Correct.
So then from what I understand, from what you're saying, there is one school of thought, and I have to say that within the legal fraternity, it's a fairly wide school of thought that this bill is unconstitutional. It won't even stand a day in court. I take it from what you're saying that you don't buy that. You think this will stand the legal test.
I respectfully disagree from those who have that view. It happens all the time. That's the majesty of the law.
Happens all the time. That's the majesty of the law. Harish Salve, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Right.